with different types of genetics, and every genetics has their variation. Variations that most people are looking for is how does it affect facial features, let's say. You know, you can pick on Down syndrome. If I say Down syndrome, you'll have a very specific facial feature in your head, is an imagination. Some munchkins with different variations or genetic mutations do not have that facial. So when you're looking at the parameters in, like, say for childbirth, they're looking for dimorphic features, facial asymmetries, let's say, special features, or midline interruptions, like a cleft palate, or that's such. Another thing they start looking for is muscle tone. Do you have a high tone body or do you have a low tone body? Right? So specifically, though, what you're working with in regards from my world, which is movement, is I'm looking for, first of all, can the child weight transfer? So when you're working with a variant called SPG4, right, and it's not that common, but it's, when it happens to you guys, by the way, when they say there's 1,000,001 chance of having it, that's one thing. But when it happens to you, it's now 100%. You know what I mean? So medical statistics sort of go out the window when it affects your child. But one of the things you're looking for is not so much tone, is what I'm looking for is weight transfer. I can go way over here. He has a very low sense of gravity, especially from the waist on down. It's almost like he has a different upper body for playing and a lower body. When I do a tilt of a child, and I taught this in the beginner's touch, but I'll also be in the neuromuscular clinic, but when your child's tilt is off, tilt factor, meaning at what point are they going to fall, let's say. But if I tilt a child, that child, if they know gravity, the gravitational reflexes, then the foot will come underneath their bodies or under the system. This is not apparent in SPG4. It really, especially again from the waist on down, you'll see variations in their gravitational responses. They tend to bunny hop, two knees together. They can't be on one knee or the other, where they don't have that weight transfer, but they don't have that gravity. So very similar to CP. So see if I come out here, do you see how his legs go straight out? This is what you also see in cerebral palsy. Again, with gravity, it should be underneath him. Now he knows he needs legs, so right now he's trying to pull it in his gut to bring his legs more underneath his body like that. But they should naturally, if I tilt side to side, or front to back, they should naturally want to come under his system, right? And that is, it's not that it's difficult for him, that's not in his nervous system, central nervous system. So even when the legs are like this and he's leaning on something, you can see where gravity's kicking in, the leg starts to collapse a little bit. This is where a lot of the munchkins are walking at one point, walking per se, but they lose it. Why? Because when you start bending your legs like this, if I ask you to not stand up, how do I say this is not standing up? We just covered this in the webinar, right? His feet are not under the pelvis. If I were to, drop a plumb line, I don't care if it's his car, if you'll let me, right? It should be here, it would be here, right? So he's not underneath his system, he's here. Now you can say, hey Michelle, that's fine because he's leaning. But he doesn't know to be under his system. I see that and notice that in all the SPG4 kiddos. This is a hard conversation for their system. Again, when I do more like this, see if I tilt him sideways, he's not looking to bring his feet under the body. As long as his upper body can play, he's just doing it just fine. But again, I've covered this before in videos. If, let's say you're falling, which this is closer to fall than it's standing, that's another thing you have to watch out for, is it's a dump truck. And when you're falling, you're not strong enough to stop it. So that's not a tone issue, that's just a fall issue. You don't want to mess with physics in the body, you don't want to mess with how physics are organized in the body. What you want to do is, what can I do? What can I do to create an atmosphere in his body that his body kicks in and goes, oh, that's what gravity is. That's what I do with lots of munchkins. It doesn't matter if it's autism, CP. it's some of the things I look for, because in this position, now he can play with the stand and get in and out of standing when his feet are more directly under his body. We're going to always be in a situation like this, but you can see if I wasn't here, he would collapse. I don't let him be in a position that he can't maintain on his own. I want it to be functional movement. So over here, this isn't functional, because if I wasn't in here, he'd fall down, right? You want to have him more in standing. This is not a tone thing. In SPG4, it's a gravity thing. Tone is involved, but it's not the cause, right? Another thing that happens is that the munchkins, especially as they go from top to bottom, you'll notice his fine motor skills up here are much quicker than they are down here. Yes, your toes, feet, fine motor skills. You're not seeing that. No, he doesn't want to do lives. He wants to talk about his cars. And so what you're looking for is, again, fine motor skills, the tongue, the breath, the hands are quicker, upper body. They get very engrossed and slow down below. I'm not talking about a cognitive slow. I'm talking about a movement slow. When you're trying to get a child to walk or to brace himself or whatever you want to call it, right? You don't want that slowness. Now, you and I, we can go nice and slow and still have balance. You're not going to see that finesse at any 2-year-old or 3-year-old. It doesn't matter. They don't have it. They're much quicker. They're clumsier. They fall down. They get up. They giggle. We fall down and go, what the heck? I'm calling the police. You know, there's a difference as we size out. So a child that's older with bad properties of movement, and this is where we always go back to those foundations, then the parameters have now changed, and that child now is, in a sense, too heavy, are not strong enough to consider to be walking or getting in and out of standing. And what do? Muscle strength, muscle strength, muscle strength. I say it, I don't care if it's his size or your size. If you can't get in and out of standing, you're not walking, right? That's what you have to work on. Always go back to those transitional skills. Because if you can't really transfer and transition, you're not going to be strong enough. You're not strong enough to stop the fall. So these are some of the characteristics that you look at sort of all variations of developmental delays. But it's not about the developmental delays, it's where do we work on. So I've been working on constantly to make him faster or quicker, right? And that's one of the things. I'm not bringing him back and shaking him, right? But his able to transfer, weight transfer and transition at a much quicker rate is going to give him the goods that he needs to. And see, he'd rather stand on his own than without support. I'm just here to guide it and work around that. Thanks.